Welcome to Preservation Oaks, the podcast where we invite you to step away from the bustle of everyday life. Settle in and relax, and take a moment to leave the familiar behind as we explore the hidden gems of America that preserve our cultural past. We call them our Preservation Oaks, and with each episode, we'll journey to a different corner of the country, where we'll discover the unique histories, landscapes, and communities that make up our nation. We'll visit with local museums, historical and genealogical societies. They are the stewards of these stories. They preserve the legacy of each place like precious pieces of fabric in a quilt that binds the freedom-loving, hardworking people in this country together. So, slow down, grab a beverage, open your mind, and let us take you on a tour of the fascinating histories and heartfelt traditions that lie just beyond the horizon. This is Preservation Oaks, where every story is a stitch in the fabric of our shared culture. Now, join our host, Sean Radcliffe, as he uncovers another thread in the tapestry of America's heritage and what it takes to preserve it.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends and listeners from across the United States and around the world, welcome to this very special episode of Preservation Oaks. Today we stand at the doorstep of the milestone of the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. I was fortunate enough to witness our 200th anniversary in 1976, and now our 250th. And like many of you listening, I know I won't be here for the 300th. But that's the nature of history, isn't it? We don't inherit a country to keep forever. Like everyone who's gone before us, we inherit it for a brief time, to care for it, to understand it, and to pass it forward. Americans can celebrate that, although many cultures and kingdoms are far older than our country. Only a tiny number of modern nations have enjoyed 250 years of continuous self-government under their original founding principles. The United States is part of that small group. We're now 250 years since July 4th, 1776, when a group of intellectuals, farmers, merchants, lawyers, physicians, and brave citizens gathered in Philadelphia and declared to the world that freedom is not a privilege to be given by some monarch or government, nor based on some kind of individual citizen balance sheet of good things and bad things kept in some government database. It's a right. That moment in 1776 changed the trajectory of the world, and today I reflect on that legacy. In this episode, we're not just talking about the big national events, all the battles, the presidents, the sweeping narratives. No, on Preservation Oaks, we go deeper. We honor local histories, the quiet corners of our country, the stories that textbooks often miss. And I've learned so many of these stories, thanks to our guests on the program. Because the story of America isn't just the story of its founding generation. It's the story of who the founding fathers and mothers were, and still are. We the people. Our founders recognized in 1776 that our innate human nature, left unchecked, can lead to the concentration of power. And they designed a system intended to guard against that. They studied the Bible and history of governments across the world, and especially those that failed. As a result, they understood that if given the chance, any government will eventually usurp power away from the people and become bloated, greedy, unjust, scheming, tyrannical, entitled, and corrupt. Without our American form of government, how our three branches are designed, our protections, checks, and balances, a government or criminals will unceremoniously take whatever they want, whenever they want, leaving the people with nothing but an intolerable situation. And today in 2026, we Americans are millions of ordinary people with extraordinary diversity, hard work, courage, resilience, and dreams. It's been impressive how we have worked to preserve our national values, our founding principles against all odds, against all attempts to subvert them, and how, thus far anyway, we have prevailed due to how our government is set up and the individual rights defined for our citizens from the very beginning. This is part of what's made America different from many other nations. We're a country of ordinary people who value freedom and natural rights given to us by God and not the government, above all else. The founders spoke often of rights endowed by a creator, not granted by government. That belief remains central to how many Americans, myself included, understand the foundation of our freedoms. Now let's take a look at 250 years of America together. Let's begin at the beginning. When we think about Independence Day in 1776, we often picture fireworks, flags, and patriotic music. But that single original day in 1776 was filled with grave uncertainty. The founding generation were not superhuman giants. They were people with doubts, fears, families, and everything to lose, just like us today. They were people who trusted our Lord and put everything they had on the line. The Declaration of Independence was more than a proclamation. It was a promise that liberty, equality, and the pursuit of happiness are ideals worth fighting for. The red stripes on our national flag represent the blood spilled by our patriots down through these 2.5 centuries, fighting and dying for our values and our country here and across the world. And when I use the term patriots, I mean patriots of all kinds. Law enforcement patriots, military patriots, justice system patriots, working people patriots, and legislative patriots. Ordinary people who stand up when faced with someone or something that threatens our unalienable rights. We have a long line of patriots who have worked throughout their lives to preserve our values and rights. Some people use the word inalienable. Now, unalienable and inalienable mean essentially the same thing. These are rights that cannot be taken away. They are from God alone and represent the dignity of mankind. Over time, inalienable has become more commonly used, but Thomas Jefferson chose unalienable in the Declaration of Independence, so that's what I'm using here. Now, the basic rights of every citizen of the United States are primarily documented in the Constitution and its amendments. The most elementary of these are found in the Bill of Rights, which is the collective name for the first 10 amendments. These weren't just ideas on paper. They were protections born out of lived experience, from people who had seen what happens when governments go too far and drift into tyranny. If you went through your school years without the benefit of learning and hearing them, these elementary, self-evident rights from the Bill of Rights, Amendments 1 through 10, are: the First Amendment protects fundamental freedoms of expression and belief. Citizens have the right to freedom of religion, to practice any religion or none at all. The freedom of speech, to express themselves without government censorship, in the press, on social media, or on the public sidewalk. You can say what's on your mind and have the freedom to do so. However, you may not use speech to cause immediate harm, to make threats, to make false commercial claims, to deceive via fraud, or exercise deceptive conduct. Because social media companies are private companies, a social media platform removing content is not a First Amendment violation. The First Amendment limits the government. Free speech in America isn't about saying anything without consequence. It's about being a free individual and protecting the exchange of ideas while drawing a line at harm. The First Amendment guarantees freedom of the press to publish news and opinions without government interference. Freedom of assembly to gather peacefully for protest or demonstration. The key word here is peacefully. The First Amendment guarantees the right to petition, to formally request the government address grievances. Think about that for a moment. Freedom of speech, freedom of belief, not common in much of the world. The next 8 amendments protect the right of citizens to keep and bear arms and to maintain a well-ordered militia. Please, don't ever allow the government to take this right away from us people, unless and until the government itself does the same thing. This was put into our founding documents to protect the people against the tyranny of the government. These amendments prohibit the government from forcing citizens to house soldiers in their homes during peacetime without their consent. They protect citizens from unreasonable searches and seizures. They require that any search warrant be supported by probable cause, and that the warrant describe the specific place to be searched and items to be seized and be approved by a judge. These amendments provide several key protections for individuals accused of a crime. The right to a grand jury for serious crimes. Protection from double jeopardy. A person cannot be tried for the same crime twice. Protection from self-incrimination. A person cannot be compelled to testify against oneself. It's called pleading the fifth. The Due Process Clause. The government cannot deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Eminent domain. Private property cannot be taken for public use without just compensation. These amendments guarantee rights for a fair and speedy public trial by an impartial jury, including the right to be notified of the charges, the right to confront witnesses, the right to compel witnesses to testify, and the right to legal counsel. These amendments provide the right to trial by jury in civil cases. They prohibit cruel and unusual punishment and excessive bail. Within these amendments, it states that the enumeration of certain rights in the Constitution does not mean that other unlisted rights are not also protected by the Constitution. This is a recognition of natural rights that exist beyond what is written. The founders recognized that they were not all-knowing, and that powers not delegated specifically to the federal government by the Constitution are reserved to the states or to the people, and not the government. From other founding documents and principles, the Declaration of Independence established the philosophical foundation for our nation. It states that all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, contains the Privileges and Immunities Clause, which prevents states from discriminating against citizens of other states. While not part of the original 10, here are some amendments that are considered fundamental to the rights of all U.S. citizens. These were passed by the people, the Congress, as our nation has evolved since its founding. The 13th Amendment was passed in 1865 and abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime. The 14th Amendment was passed in 1868. This is one of the most significant amendments for defining citizenship and rights. It defines citizenship as all persons not subject to another government who are born or naturalized in the U.S. It incorporates the Bill of Rights, applies most of the protections in the Bill of Rights to the states through its due process clause. It guarantees equal protection and ensures that no state can deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of law. The 15th Amendment was passed in 1870 and prohibits the denial of the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The 19th Amendment was passed in 1920 and prohibits the denial of the right to vote based on sex. These documents and amendments collectively form the legal basis for the rights and liberties of every citizen of the United States. There are 27 amendments to our Constitution in total. I encourage everyone to be aware of them. They prove that our government, by the consent of the people, can change things when we feel the need to. These amendments are at the heart of how the country evolved socially, politically, and economically. Yet because history is messy, we must also acknowledge our country's contradictions. The people who signed our founding documents wrote lofty ideals, but they were human and imperfect, as we all are. They, like us today, did not fully live up to our ideals. Slavery was entrenched in our nation at one time, but thanks to our American system and a great civil war that was fought by our people, it no longer is. Women could not vote at one time, and thanks to our system, they can and have since the early 20th century. Indigenous peoples were enemies in the past, and we fought wars with them. But they are now an integral part of our country. They've supported our country as patriots in all ways possible, and many have given their last full measure of devotion to America. Political liberty was not universal for all, and now here in 2026, while still not perfected, liberty is shining bright as ever and must remain so to take our values into the future and on to colonies on other planets. One of the beauties of America is this: every generation since 1776 has pushed us closer to our ideals. We sometimes have taken 2 steps backward before doing the right things, but through sacrifice, peaceful protest, innovation, and resilience, the nation has expanded the circle of the citizens that we, the people, truly includes. The spirit of 1776 is not frozen in time. It's alive every time an American stands up for justice aligned with our founding principles and values. Every time a community rebuilds after hardship. Every time we, the people, preserve our culture. And every time a child learns about their place in American history, in the American promise, in the American values. So we've talked about the spirit of 1776, and we've walked through the rights that form the bedrock of our nation. Now I want to take a step back and look outward for a moment to consider America's place in the broader international community. This is a milestone episode, 250 years of the United States, and it's worth taking a thoughtful look at how the ideas born in 1776 compare to the world around us today. You may hear people say that the American system is outdated, or that our founding principles are simply one version of many, no more unique than any other. That's a perspective worth examining carefully, because when we step back and look at the historical record, and even more importantly, the present-day world, we begin to see something very clearly. The freedoms that many Americans experience every day are not the global norm. They are, in many cases, the exception. Across the world today, there are countries where speaking out against the government can result in imprisonment, torture, or worse. Journalists are silenced or restricted. People have their bodies harmed or worse, if they don't wear a specific piece of clothing. Elections are controlled or manipulated. Citizens are not free to assemble peacefully. Access to information is restricted or filtered. These are not distant ancient examples. These are modern realities, documented in international reports and observed in current events. In some places, governments maintain control by limiting dissent. In others, instability or conflict makes basic freedoms difficult to sustain. And in many regions, the rule of law, something we in America often take for granted, is still a work in progress. There are organizations that attempt to measure these conditions. They look at factors like political rights, civil liberties, economic freedom, and rule of law. And what they consistently find is this: only a relatively small percentage of the world's population lives in countries with the highest levels of personal and economic freedom. That doesn't mean those other nations lack value, culture, or history. Far from it. Every country has its own story, its own strengths, and its own path. But it does mean that the specific combination of rights and protections that developed in the United States is not something that naturally occurs everywhere. It has to be built. It has to be protected from one generation to the next. And it has to be maintained over time. That's one of the remarkable aspects of the American story. From its founding, the United States was built on a framework that placed limits on government power and emphasized the role of the individual citizen. A constitutional republic, a system of checks and balances, a rule of law designed to apply broadly and consistently. And while we've not always lived up to those ideals perfectly, and history clearly shows that we haven't because we're human, each generation has had the opportunity to move closer to them. That's an important distinction. The American system is not static. It's designed to adapt through law, through education of our children, through civic participation, and through the will of the people. And over time, we've seen that happen. Expansions of voting rights, greater legal protections, and broader inclusion in the definition of we the people. Progress has not always been smooth. It has not always been fast. It has not come without cost, sometimes a very large cost. But it has come. So when we talk about American ideals on this 250th anniversary, we're not talking about perfection. We're talking about a framework that has allowed a nation to correct itself, to grow, and to continue striving toward its founding principles. And that's something worth understanding and worth preserving, because the ideas set in motion in 1776 didn't just shape one country. They influenced conversations about governance, rights, and liberty all across the world. And they continue to do so today. So as we reflect on America's place in the international community, it's not about comparison for the sake of superiority. It's about perspective. It's about recognizing what exists in the United States, how it came to be, and what it requires from each generation and each citizen to sustain it. Because freedom, wherever it exists, is never guaranteed. It's practiced, it's defended, it's educated, it's protected, and it's passed on. When we reflect on 250 years, it's important to remember history is not just the past, it's also the present speaking. Every town in America, whether bustling or quiet, holds a thread in the tapestry of our national history. Every community, no matter how large or small, contributes a chapter to the American story. Think about a mining town in Colorado, a fishing village in Maine, a Civil War community in Mississippi, a copper mine in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, a bustling immigrant neighborhood in New York, a Swedish settlement in Kansas, a native village in Alaska, a railroad junction in Tennessee, or a ranching community in Texas. Each place preserves stories about how people lived, dreamed, worked, survived, and contributed to our nation, to its growth, to its values, to its success. This is why museums, historical societies, and genealogical organizations matter so much. They keep our stories alive, both good and bad, because history is messy. Your local museum might have a soldier's farewell letter, a miner's helmet, a pioneer's kitchen tools, a sharecropper's ledger, an early photo showing Main Street in 1902, a scrapbook from the local women's club, or a wooden toy carved by a father for his daughter. These aren't just artifacts. They are time capsules overflowing with humanity. They remind us who we are and where we came from. Now, let's talk about something truly staggering. Federal studies estimate that the United States is home to 30,000 to 35,000 museums. Let that number hit you. 30+ thousand repositories of memory, all across this great nation. And the American Association for State and Local History recently identified over 21,000 history organizations, historical societies, heritage centers, historic homes, cultural groups, historic sites, local archives. These organizations form the backbone of our national memory. And then there are the genealogical societies, thousands of them, from small county groups meeting in church basements to city archives, to statewide genealogical alliances, to ethnic societies preserving African American, Indigenous, Jewish, Scandinavian, Ukrainian, Polish, Irish, German, Hispanic, and countless other family legacies. Together, these organizations form a living, breathing network of memory keepers, people who stay late at night to scan photographs, people who handwrite donor receipts, people who transcribe old diaries, people who walk cemeteries with clipboards documenting names, people who lift heavy boxes from dusty basements, people who help others by teaching classes, hosting tours, preserving oral histories, and keeping buildings standing. Most of these people are volunteers. Most are unpaid. Most will never be thanked. But they continue anyway, because they understand the value of memory, and without them, America would forget itself. This right here is the heart of the Preservation Oaks mission. Let's travel across the country through stories that reflect the soul of America. There's the Appalachian Schoolhouse, a one-room schoolhouse in rural Kentucky that preserved the names of children who learned to read by the light of oil lamps. That schoolhouse helped launch generations into literacy and opportunity. There's the Mississippi River Town Museum that preserves the ledger of an early African American businessman who bought freedom for enslaved family members. His perseverance rippled across generations, and his story and heritage of freedom must be preserved and retold. In Creede or Breckenridge, Colorado, where the mines closed long ago, the museums there keep alive the stories of danger, innovation, immigration, and community resilience at 9,000 feet. These were amazing days of pioneer resilience and belief in the promise of this country. The Dust Bowl Farm, where a family archive in Oklahoma holds letters describing dust storms so thick they turned noon to midnight. Through those accounts, we understand the endurance of families who refused to give up on their American dreams. The Ellis Island immigrant story, written in a suitcase brought from Poland in 1908 and carefully preserved and displayed at a genealogical society in New York. Inside were 2 shirts, a prayer book, and a photograph. That suitcase tells the story of millions who came to America not seeking handouts, not seeking to be given everything by the government, but to be free. To work hard and to build a life they knew was protected by our form of government. A life they didn't and couldn't have where they came from. Something to be cherished and passed on and protected. The Native Heritage Center, where tribal historians in the Southwest preserve songs, ceremonies, and family histories threatened with erasure over time. They remind us that Indigenous stories are American stories. Each of these brief examples speaks to a universal truth. History becomes alive when it becomes personal. And personal history, local history, is the foundation of national history. It's tempting to think of history as something complete, but history is messy, and our story of America is still being written. As we celebrate this 250th year, we face a series of questions. What kind of nation will we be in 2076? What stories will be told about us in 2126? What will future historians say about our courage to preserve and protect this land and these ideals, or our lack of it? What innovations will we leave behind? Innovations that stem out of our ability to educate our children properly. Will we choose unity over division according to our founding principles? Will we, the people, allow voices that dismiss our founding principles in order to guide us into their own visions of the anointed, insisting that our founding values are outdated? This concept was powerfully critiqued by Thomas Sowell in his 1995 book, The Vision of the Anointed. And will we treat our values as something temporary or as something sacred? The United States is an ongoing experiment, and preserving our history is essential to that experiment. From the Declaration of Independence to today, many Americans have believed that our rights come from God, not government. That belief has shaped our founding and institutions. It continues to guide how many of us understand freedom. When we're educated in and understand where we come from, we gain clarity about where we're going. Local history keeps us grounded. It tells us what communities valued, what they endured, what they celebrated, what they overcame, what they built, and what they dreamed. It teaches empathy, humility, gratitude. It teaches us just how internationally unique America is and why it will remain so. If we want a strong America in the next 250 years, we must continue preserving our ideals, our way of life, and the stories of everyday people, and continually educate our children in these. As we celebrate this 4th of July, as fireworks sparkle across the sky, as parades march, as families gather, take just a moment to reflect on your own connection to history and how many Americans have given their last full measure of devotion to our founding, to our country, and to the belief that we are given unalienable rights by God and not the government. Look to the past as inspiration to take you to greater heights in the future. Visit your local museum. Support your historical society. Donate a family photograph. Volunteer at a local archive. Attend a genealogy lecture or class. And discover the stories in your local community. Because the spirit of 1776 doesn't belong to the past. It belongs to us, we the people. It lives through the choices we make, the institutions we support, the things we educate our children to value, and the stories we pass down. As we bring this episode to a close, let's remember something profound. America is not just a place. It's an idea, a bold and enduring idea, built on the belief that we, the people, can govern ourselves. Not kings, not monarchs, not the anointed, not worldwide institutions, not distant powers, but citizens, individuals working within their own communities. America was built on individual responsibility, on liberty, on life, on the pursuit of happiness, on justice, on hope, and on the relentless pursuit of a better tomorrow through hard work and responsibility. For 250 years, this country has grown, struggled, triumphed, and evolved. We have stumbled at times. We have learned. And we have worked generation by generation to move closer to the ideals set before us by our founders. And through it all, one truth remains. This country and its values are bigger than any single one of us. We inherit it, we care for it, and then we pass it forward. I was fortunate enough to witness our 200th anniversary in 1976, and now our 250th. And like many of you listening, as I said before, I won't be here for the 300th. But that's the nature of history. What we do today, how we preserve our stories, how we uphold our principles, how we teach our children, that's what will shape the America that does reach the next milestone. As we celebrate this 250th birthday, take pride in what has been built. Take responsibility for what has been entrusted to us. And take seriously the role each of us plays in what comes next. Because the future of this country will not be decided all at once. It will be shaped quietly, in communities, in families, in classrooms, and in the choices we make every single day based upon our American values. So happy 250th birthday, America. May we continue to grow. May we continue to learn. May we continue to pass forward not just a nation, but the ideals that give it life. Thank you so much for joining me on this very special episode of Preservation Oaks. I am your host, Sean Radcliffe, inviting you to carry this story forward with gratitude for the past and individual responsibility for the future. Hey, this is Sean Radcliffe. See you all next time on Preservation Oaks. And until then, keep on giving and keep on living the good life.
You can visit at www.microstreamradio.com. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted by Microstream Radio. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, reproduced, copied, or used anywhere without the written permission of Microstream Radio. Preservation Oaks starring Sean Radcliffe originates in Salt Lake City, Utah. Be sure to join us for our next episode on your favorite podcast platform. This is Sonia Maxwell speaking. Preservation Oaks has come to you through the worldwide podcast platform Podbean, and our home is preservationoaks.podbean.com. Hopefully you found today's episode useful, informative, and thought-provoking. If so, please like, comment, and subscribe. Remember that being free means being free to be curious, and that historical and genealogical societies and museums allow us to discover the past, be free to explore, where curiosity opens every door. Thanks to everyone for listening. Stay cozy, curious, and keep exploring the incredible stories that shape our world. Remember to cherish and support the preservation of history in your own communities. The content of this program is provided for educational and informational purposes only. Some material included in this program may be copyrighted by third parties. However, under Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Act, the doctrine of fair use allows the limited use of copyrighted material without requiring permission from the rights holders when used for purposes such as education, criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. These uses are legally permitted even if they might otherwise constitute infringement. If you wish to use copyrighted material from this program for purposes beyond fair use, you must obtain permission from the copyright owner. If you believe your copyrighted material has been used in this program in a way that does not qualify as fair use, please contact us at preservationoaks@gmail.com. Thank you.